Well, hello everyone, and you join us here today reminiscing about Watches and Wonders. It feels like such a long time ago, specifically talking about Zsa Le Coultre. What do you remember?
I remember a big observatory, feeling a little bit dizzy, and I remember a lot of sidereal stuff, constellations, and I remember some sort of molecular kind of scaffolding. That's about it. The scaffolding, I should add, was on a watch. It wasn't part of their stand.
The whole thing was somewhere between a crazy fever dream and the intro to a sci-fi show. I'll be honest, even handling these watches and looking at them, it's taken going back and looking through all the information again to try and make head and tail of what I actually saw. It genuinely was quite discombobulating. So hopefully what we can do now is translate some of that, present it very clearly and efficiently to you, dear viewer and listener, and help you understand what we really struggled to. So what they've been presenting this year is the Stellar Odyssey collection. This is really the exploration of the sky and the measurement of all of the celestial bodies. And I'd say they have certainly managed to achieve that. We'll start with the Master Grand Tradition, Caliber 948. This is a world time complication. You're familiar with world time complications, Tom?
Yes, sure, yeah. Telling the time in different places.
Yeah, pick your city, you get a time. Lovely. Only the difference is here that Zsa Le Coultre have decided to add an orbiting, what they call a cosmotourbillon, which orbits the dial once every 24 hours. And not only that, they have it orbiting a globe, which has been skeletonized. 388 parts in total. What were your initial reactions to seeing this watch?
What I love about this watch is the representation of the Earth, because the land masses are actually kind of solid and like raised up, hovering above the dial. And I think they're cut from white gold.
Yeah.
And they're floating on this beautiful guilloche lacquered ocean. And it's awesome. It's like a tiny little world. And I think that is the view of the Earth that Jaeger's watchmakers currently have right now, because they're off the planet with what they're doing right now.
Well, yeah, and I'd like to point out as well that the globe, the land masses are depicted with white gold wire, which is then filled with hand-painted enamel. Now, we saw the lady doing some hand-painted enamel, and it blew my puny little mind.
There's so much amazing enameling going on in these new releases. It's awesome.
This all comes under, I'm going to have to do my very best French accent here. This all comes under the métier rare, or something like that.
Rare meters.
rare handcrafted detailing, hand-painted globe. And like you say, this whole thing floats in a skeletonized mesh that sits over the guilloche'd waves, coloured with a blue lacquer. But really what makes this very impressive, and I hadn't noticed it until now because I was so overwhelmed, the tourbillon itself, as it orbits every 24 hours, appears to float completely in space. There's no mechanism that seems to conjoin it. It just hovers there and spins around, seemingly floating. It's very impressive.
Yeah, very good.
Well, so you thought, because that's a piece of old rubbish compared to these. The Hybris Artistica Caliber 945. I would have been quite happy if Zsa Le Coultre had come with the Grand Tradition and said, this is what we've done this year. Everyone has said, oh, yes, very good. And everyone would have had a little clap. But no, they've come with two more watches as well as part of the Hybris Artistica Caliber 945. You've got the similar orbiting cosmotourbillon. But this time we see the depiction of the night sky with months around the outer calendar. And what they've tried to do here is chuck in a little bit more métier rare to demonstrate the real handcrafted capabilities the company is capable of doing. What are your thoughts on these ones?
Yeah, really amazing watches. Very crazy. So there's only 5 each of these, and they're both very different. So you've got a stormy, celestial, black and white depiction of the cosmos on one, and then the other's a very blue, starry night sky. So the sidereal time I find quite baffling, and the white dots and lines that depict the constellations. Reminds me of the confused math lady meme. Do you know what I mean? Where she stood in front of all those equations. And that's also how I feel when I look at it. So, there's loads going on. They've got a sky chart, celestial vault, whatever that is, zodiacal calendar, and a minute repeater, and another flying tourbillon as well. So,
yeah, it's absolutely bonkers. There are 2 versions, like you say, 5 of each. My greasy palms during Watches and Wonders very nearly made it only 4 of each. There's the celestial sky, which uses a technique that is a first for JLC, the grisé enamel, which is that's the black and grey, the monochrome one you saw. So they paint on where you see those 3-dimensional depictions of planets and things like that. They have to paint each layer of shading on as another layer.
Yeah.
So they'll paint on the lightest colour and then fire it, and then paint on a slightly greyer colour and then fire it, and so on and so forth, to try and create those spherical 3-dimensional shapes. And they have to be really careful with this, because if they paint too many layers, there are some parts of it that end up too thick. So not only is it a real artistic endeavour, but it's also quite the brain teaser in trying to figure out how to get the best representation with the least number of layers possible, with brushes and a furnace. Then you also have the atomium signature, which has that metallic structure which looks very almost DNA-like.
Yeah, that was the scaffolding I was referring to earlier.
And I don't know if I'm making this up or if I heard this at the show, but I'm sure they said those little balls and pipes between them are all screwed together, which further blows my puny little mind, and I'm sure you can all see now why we went away from this feeling rather discombobulated. And then, like you said, Tom, on top of all of that, they decided to chuck in a minute repeater as well. You know, just 'cause lol, I suppose.
Maybe they've got them all ready-made and they need to use them up. So just slap them in there.
Do you think? Just a little bit of a rebranding, new facelift for an old movement just to get them out. They had 10 left.
Yeah.
Well, from that mind-bending collection to something perhaps a little bit easier to get our heads around, they've also added the Perpetual Calendar Caliber 868AA to the Polaris. Now, I'm starting to feel like the Polaris and the code 1159 are getting a little bit close together. They look very, very similar.
Oh, that's funny you should say that. I like the Polaris. That's Jaeger's more kind of sporty number, isn't it? I think sporty elegance, they call it.
Spellegance.
Sure. So, yeah, kind of strange for them to put a perpetual calendar in it. That's sort of really, really stretching the offering of that collection, isn't it? I think now, price-wise, that a Polaris can cost you from £6,000 to £26,000, which is what these new perpetual calendars cost. So, yeah, pretty crazy, but yeah, if you like your Polaris and you don't like simplicity, then you can get a perpetual calendar. And I think it was a great undertaking to squeeze it into that case.
It certainly looks, by the way the subdials are laid out, it looks like it's been crowbarred in there. And thinking about the Audemars Piguet Code 1159 perpetual calendar, I expect that is a lot more. So the watch you're getting here is going to be, as typical for Jaeger-LeCoultre, exceptional value for money for heritage, quality, and complication. Can't really say fairer than that, can you?
No.
Well, after that little bit of a mental respite, let's jump straight back into the craziness with perhaps the most bonkers thing that JLC did there. It wasn't even a watch, it was a clock. Are you familiar with the Atmos Clock, Tom?
Yeah, that's like the bell jar with the mechanical clock in it, right?
Yeah, that's right. It works with a series of bimetallic bellows, I believe, that are very, very, very sensitive to temperature. A single degree moves the bellows enough to power the thing for 48 hours, 2 days. So the efficiency of the mechanism is so fine, it's so minimal friction, so very carefully balanced and stuff like that, that this tiny, tiny, tiny change of a degree in temperature can power it for so long. It's quite fascinating, really. It's probably the closest thing we'll come to perpetual motion.
Right, yeah.
But this particular example, they have really gone to town with as part of the Stellar Odyssey collection. It's not enough to tell the time. So by squeezing in 443 components, they have created a tellurium, which shows the cycles of the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon to incredible accuracy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's awesome. My favourite thing is the globe, the little hand-painted spherical globe. I wonder if I could just get one of those. I don't need the rest of it, but I wonder if they could start maybe just portioning out little bits and pieces, little bits of merch
That would be
to
good,
keep
wouldn't
us
it?
to keep us peasants happy.
Maybe just like the offcuts, the globes didn't come out quite so right.
Yeah.
Perhaps the tip of South America goes a bit too far and they had to throw it away. More examples of métier rare with the hand-painted globe. There is a blue lacquer frame, a laser engraved moon, and a meteorite dial. So they've gone all in. But it's not just the way it looks that's so impressive about this clock. It's the accuracy.
Yeah.
So the rotation of the Earth is accurate to 390 years. So if you get one of these, you don't have to set it again. That's fine. It's because they track the year not just as 365 days, but 365.2466 days. So you get that incredible accuracy, but that seems like the work of a sloppy hobo by comparison to the accuracy of the moon, which they have managed to dial in so you don't have to adjust it for nearly 6 millennia.
Right.
So you probably have to set yourself a reminder, otherwise you might forget to adjust it then.
I do have to take their word on that though, don't I?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, you're not going to be able to call them out on it. In this post-apocalyptic world when the Earth is just ground to dust and you're still hanging on to your Atmos Hybris Mechanica. But what a thing. What a thing. And I like the watches very much that they have made, but I think the Atmos Clock, if I could have any of these Stellar Odyssey pieces, this would be the one. And I'd have it on my side next to my Lego Ferrari F40, and I'd look at it and I'd like it. Would you have one?
I think it would make the rest of my house look untidy.
No matter what you did.
Yeah.
You have a very tidy house, or is that just when you have guests?
Yeah. Well, that's I keep a tidy house, but even so, even just after everything was done and spick and span, you introduce that and everything looks like crap around it.
Yeah, it does require the house to go with it, and I expect it probably costs more than my house anyway.
It'd be like standing next to Jeremy Jauncey.
Which we didn't get a chance to do, unfortunately. Probably for the best, for our own morals. So there you have it. That has untangled some of the insanity of Jaeger-LeCoultre's thinking when it comes to making watches. Of course, they can't just make simple watches, they have to make ones that blow our minds, and our minds were blown. And while we go and pick up the pieces, why don't you pop a little subscribe down there at the bottom, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.